friends, welcome back. Today I'm going to be working on my quote journal. We have a new month and therefore I have a new theme, and the theme for June is goals. So something that I want to kind of think about and focus on, some specific things that I want to try to make them maybe a habit for the rest of the year, since we're halfway through 2018, if you can believe that. So I hope that maybe this also inspires you to, think of some things that you want to focus for the rest of the year, starting with this month. So I'm going to be using this paper of feathers, this one right here. This one is by Simple Stories, and the whole theme of the page or the layout, I wanted to replicate some dream catchers. And I also knew that I was going to need some flowers, and I knew this paper pad had some flowers or pattern paper with flowers as well. I started to think that I wanted to use that little piece of book paper that you see there on the left, but it was a lot smaller than the journal page. So to cover the edges, I decided to use some tissue paper. I love using tissue paper because it doesn't add a lot of bulk to the page, but yet it still can add a lot of the texture and color. And of course, turquoise being my favorite. This is kind of a minty green, but it kind of looks like turquoise to me. So I went ahead and started cutting out little pieces and putting them on the edge. And then I was going to put the whole page of that book texture on the center, but I didn't like it. So I ended up cutting the book page as well in little strips and adding them throughout the pages. Now you will see that I made a mistake, and with the recording, I went ahead, when I was going to dry the page, I paused the video and then I forgot to continue recording, and so you won't get to see me tear the little pages of that book page and add them to the journal, but you get the idea. It's the exact same thing. You just tear out little pieces and then you just randomly place them on your page and use the decoupage to adhere them. And you see that a little bit there but then I go back and then there, I'm completely done. I just can't believe I did that. But again, I think at least the step you can kind of understand what I was trying to do. So the next thing, because you can see that those colors and that texture is it just pops, and you kind of want to have a kind of a neutral or simple background to put the quotes, because obviously I got to put writing on it. It would be very distracting, and it wouldn't be good to have the book paper sticking out that much. So I went ahead and added some gesso, and I did it very lightly. The brush that I'm using there, it's a plastic, it's like a rubber spatula, but in the shape of a brush, and that one is by Prima Marketing, and I love it. I got them on clearance at Hobby Lobby, so I bought 2 of those. They come in different sizes too. So now can you see how that background is a little bit more muted and more kind of a solid color? So I was showing you there the colors of the paper that the feathers, and so I decided to use obviously the same colors to make sure that everything would kind of coordinate. So I'm using some acrylic paint. I guess you could use some watercolor as well. Because I put a coat of gesso, the page itself is accepting the acrylic paint really, really well. But I'm using water too on the acrylic paint. I'm not applying it straight out. So I kind of water it down a little bit, and then again, I wanted the background to be muted, just kind of a soft color. So I added water, and then I went ahead and also used a paper towel to dab, and so it's almost like it's leaving a very faint tone of the colors rather than a strong color. It's almost like watercolors. So I'm doing the drip technique that's very popular. I just add a lot of water and let the paint, just drip, and it just creates kind of a, more texture and a cool effect. those tend to be, these three colors tend to be my favorite anyways to use, so it always works out. And apparently all the designers think they're really cool, because most of the papers that I end up purchasing, they are this kind of a color palette. So I still wanted to add a little bit of the pink, and what I'm doing is in the areas where there is no paper, so there's no tissue paper or there's no book paper, and you can kind of see straight into the journal page itself, I'm trying to add more of that acrylic paint there as well. But you can see how it changed from having that very strong book paper and the tissue paper, and now it's just so subtle. Always dry as you go. One thing I always do is, if I'm using a background, and I spend so much time working and adding tissue paper, or in this case, this book paper, I don't want to cover it with paint and, anything else. Again, you still can see it, but it's not distracting from the actual, the end result of the design. So I use that awesome stamp that I got. I love that Harlequin pattern. And so I used some ink, and then I used some of the actual acrylic paint to do a little bit random stamping on the background, just to add more texture. Once again, dry as you go. I saved you the time of me, of you watching me fussy cut the feathers, and also printed the quotes on an acrylic sheet, because again, what is the point of working on your awesome background if you're just gonna cover it? I wanna see that background. And I used that pen and it didn't write on the plastic, so I found this other one so that I can trace the area where I'm going to be cutting. But anyways, so that is one tip that I have, and one preference for myself, that if I'm gonna work and spend a lot of time on a background for mixed media, I don't want to cover it. So I cut the shape, and those little circles there, I actually created those using not Photoshop, but Illustrator by Adobe. And it's just with a pen, with a digital pen, I created the shape, and then I saved it as a AVG file, and then I imported it into the Cricut software, and then I created a cut file. And so now I can cut those, resize them as however I want. I made other shapes as well. I made some hearts and just different circles. Anyways, they turn out really awesome, and I really, really liked how this kind of imitates that dream catcher effect that I was after. So I'm using, of course, my handy dandy glue pen. I don't think I can get away making a page without using it. To keep the balance on this page, I added, the one on top, obviously, and I didn't want to have two of them next to each other. So, but I am using only part of this circle, and it just kind of keeps both sides of the pages cohesive, and it just adds a little, more interest. So I went ahead and also fussy cut some flowers, also from that Simple Stories paper pad. And I just love how this background looks. I really love that soft look that the gesso, how it just toned down everything. So I'm going to use just some little baker's twine that I had as those little, the ribbon that you normally see hanging from the dream catchers. And the feathers were kind of large. I should have used smaller ones because I feel like I kind of cover a lot of the twine. But again, this is just a representation of dream catchers. And so I'm adding as many as I feel that will, get the idea. And also kind of the, try to use a variety of the little feathers. I just use that Elmer's tape runner, and just run a little strip of that adhesive underneath the dream catcher, and or that circle I should say. If some of the glue is sticking out, like when you feel it, you can just add a little bit of baby powder, and that will get rid of the stickiness. If you don't, if for some reason the page is getting stuck. But in my case, it wasn't. So I'm putting the feathers on top of the baker's twine just to make sure nothing is going to come apart. And it also makes the feathers kind of they make them puffy, so they almost look like, I always say 3D, but they're not 3D, but they're not flat on the paper. They're sitting on top of the baker's twine, and therefore they're just kind of sitting above, which you can see them there. It just adds, again, just kind of a nice look there. And what else? This was a pretty simple layout. Obviously, I had an idea in my head already when I started, so I think that's why it went pretty quick. So I did a lot of preparations ahead of time so that it went pretty quick. And I love it. I love it. I went to Joann's like a couple of days after I made this page because I was looking for those little hoops so that I can actually make a dream catcher. And I realized I had bought a kit on clearance a long time ago. I have never gotten to use it, so I need to actually get back and just complete it. It came with everything that I needed to make one. I just never did. So here's the second quote. I did not want to put it in on that second circle. Again, I wanted only one dream catcher because you want that to be the focus of the page. If you had two of them next to each other, it's just kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, but it just would have made it not that special. But because there's only one, your eye just focuses on that one. I'm using my lovely little pink mini stapler, and I've mentioned this company before. It's a weird spelling. It's I'm gonna say Rapesco. I will put a link to it for that little stapler, but I love it because it lets you kind of go in more into the page instead of having to stick to the edge and not being able to reach farther into the page. So I attach that second quote with staples instead of the vellum adhesive that I used on the first one. So I'm going to be coming to the end here. One more little thing I added is I found a ink pad that's kind of the same color, which isn't that amazing when you find things that absolutely match perfect, just to add a darker edge to the pages. So guys, thank you so much for coming and crafting with me. I hope we can craft together again next week. I'll try and work on a new project. One more thing I added, this set of what I call a texture set stamp by Feed Your Craft, and I absolutely love it. It was sold out and I had to wait for her to restock, and I was happy to be able to get one. And this is one of my favorite ones here, just to add a few more little things. So once again, guys, thanks for watching. I will have a list and close-up photos at the end. And until next time, make sure you get your crafty on.